Welcome to another day of Impatient Garage. Today we're going to look at why this Rambler had a gangster lean. I'm pretty sure we figured out that the upper insulator on this coil was bad. As you can see, it wasn't doing much for a long time there. We replaced the strut thinking that would help. It did because the struts were completely collapsed. But then take another look at it. The chain on this that was actually holding, or that compresses the spring down, it basically was pulled out of its housing. We found the insulator boot was completely tore up, kind of like this. Or exactly like this, I should say. And that spring was kind of sitting in there sideways. So we went out, pulled the spring, pulled the insulator, found out what the issue was. So today we're going to reattach the chain to the top, probably do a little bit of welding on it. Then we're going to refasten it down. So basically this thing is an old school system. It has a strut, but then it has, instead of a coilover system where it's adjustable, basically they have a chain going through the coil, and they have a bottom plate where they compress the shock and the spring, they undo the plate, they can then do another chain link to tighten up the suspension. Basically, this is how they control their rebound and the rate of extension there. Really old school. Coilovers do this nowadays pretty easy. You crank up the coilover, like kind of like the rear, but then they have the fully adjustable shocks that you can adjust your rebound and all that. We're not putting that on there. Pretty much any kit for this is about $500 to $1,000. But the thing is it sits where the coil spring goes for a coilover adapter. And the reason I can't do this is because I can't get to the top of the coilover. So they welded this whole entire front end from an '89 Camaro just to some some tubing up front here, and you can't get access to that top where the actual coilover would actually mount into. So we're gonna have to figure out something. Maybe next year we'll do some tubular control arm modifications, get rid of that whole front member. I mean, it's probably 180 pound, 200 pounds sitting there that we really don't need, especially if you go with a tubular control arm top bottom. Use the stock spindle here, and then just go to a coilover setup from there. Might be a lot easier, but we got, you go to QA1, it's $1,000 for an upper set of upper control arms. So I mean, you're looking at $2-3 grand to upgrade the front suspension. Where right now for a bracket car, this is gonna be fine. So we're gonna get it back to the way they had it. So we'll basically reattach that chain just to kind of get this car to even out a little bit. It gets pretty dangerous when you have a couple inch difference and your car goes up and it's gonna want to pull one direction or the other. Give us a 10-second bracket car, I probably would have been okay and probably would have gotten away with it, but you just want to be as safe as possible. And if it's something we can address now, I mean, it was a $20 insulator here. It's not a big deal, so let's get to it.
So basically they had, look at they just attached the chain, threw the chain up in there, and it looked like it bent a little bit. So they might just push it up in there. Maybe they welded it in somehow, but regardless, you'll see there's this chain. See, there's this chain on the bottom there, and essentially it attaches up into here, the top of it does, and they'll adjust this plate to basically lock in on a link, and that'll basically compress the spring and the shock a little bit more, so it kind of affects your rate of travel. It kind of limits it. So let's say this thing takes off, we don't want it to spring way back and sit. We can stiffen the suspension up by just compressing it more, or we could give it a little bit more play by loosening it up and allowing it to sit back and ride on that wheelie, kind of with the good weight transfer. Pretty old school. Like I said, it's actually should upgrade it, but you see here, if you look up top right here, you'll see if I were to switch to coilover, it would mount in the bottom there, just like, well, not like that, but there's a little loop that basically ties into that. Then it will come up here, and there's two bushings that would sandwich between on a plate here, and that would basically be your coilover. So this would essentially just disappear. Well, it's goofy because it couldn't really just disappear though, because you need something to tie in. So this, obviously this isn't factory. So they just have a plate up here that mounts up top there. So you'll see this plate here mounts right up here, right here, exactly. And then that basically locks the upper end, so then you just have the tie rod. There's no really camber or anything adjustment on this thing. It's just just your toe for your typical alignment. So yeah, so what we're going to adjust first is we're going to undo the chain here. We're going to put this back up in top somehow. Then we'll leave that hanging. We'll put the new insulator on that we got onto the spring here. Even the spring here they have it extended. I mean, you see they got these clamps in here, which they're not clamping it together, they're pushing it out, so this thing would actually spring closed. So they were definitely looking to get, basically raise the front end height a little bit to get the squat a little easier. They didn't want it to travel too much, is what it looked like they were doing. So we'll go ahead and mark that one link there, and we'll figure out how the heck I'm going to get that link to mount up in the top there. I don't know if they had some sort of bolt system or what the heck was really going on, but we'll try to figure out why it yanked out of there. Maybe weld it back in, maybe put a thicker piece of metal there. So we shall see. I mean, this stuff is just straight pop metal. I don't even know. We could have just shoved the link up in there and turned it, and then hopefully, then we're hoping, but it ended up breaking. I don't know how I'm gonna. We might shove a link up in there and then blast a couple welds on it. Maybe put a little reinforcing steel across it and go from there. It's probably what we'll do. I'll probably put the link in, weld it, tack it into here, and then we'll probably get a bigger piece. A little bit better piece of steel, clean up some of this material here, and lock it back in. That way we can lock it down and get the ride height to be equal left and right. So let's get this link out first so I can. Oh man, that ball joint looks bad too. But we'll address that another day. They only had on the third link here. Man, I did a good job on this engine rebuild. It is watertight. Ooh, wait, I see small. Ooh, where's that coming from? The Earl pin. I'm in covered gas on the bottom here. The little leak. Just when I thought I was perfect. You know, the other thing this freaking car needs is a bigger set of headers. This thing's only running an inch and 5/8 headers out of this. Because the kid got them new, and he's like, "Oh, I got headers for them." I'm like, "Oh, that's cool, I guess." But they're small, they're tiny. So, anyways, yeah, I mean, it'd be nice because this is like I said, this is an old school tube chassis. They got the frame rails running all the way back to the back of the car. It's all tied in nicely. All the roll cage ties into this. The tube chassis. The tube comes up like this. This is not factory. This is not from AMC. This is not original. Why I tell you that's because the welds are not so good. I mean, some of the welding in the back half has been it was pretty good, but this front half looks not so great. Let's go. But race season is upon us, folks. Ooh, what the hell? Where's that coming from? Some of this oil might be residual from the valve covers and stuff. I know. Let's try. I mean, oil can leak off of a freaking engine for a long time afterward. Looks like it's coming from the fuel pump provision, but we'll tighten some things up and gotta get this turd running, honestly. Well, it's running, but we gotta get it dialed in and tuned. Alright, what size bolt is this? See, and that's literally, it's all it's holding on. But they got at least a thick piece of steel for that. The top, they decided they're just going to use literally like 18 gauge steel. I mean, it's nothing. So, like I said, what we're going to do is probably put this bad boy. Let's see. Hello. put this bad boy back up in there. Maybe it's welded in. They might have had like a piece of steel. That's probably what they did. They probably had like a bolt. They just shoved it up in there. There's no way to get a second link turned in there. Well, let's take a gander.
So what I'm thinking is we got this little piece of, basically it's an old muffler hanger. We got this. So I think I'm going to cut a chunk of this, turn it down. Let's give us a little bit of support. Maybe I can shove this up in there and get the kind of push back through to kind of hold us up in there. And then we're going to take a piece of this. Also, we're going to clean up a little bit. Piece of this crappy steel here. And we're going to kind of tack it in across the face of that piece to kind of give it some reinforcement. Because basically where this link was hanging was just really thin. It's super thin. I mean, it's not going to hold that again. You're talking about it wants to hold the whole rebound of that suspension from going down. I mean, it's hefty. It's 80, 90 pounds plus the force. So let's grab an angle grinder. Get some. We'll do the safety squints. All right, safety squints. So this is what we're thinking. We got this little chunk of steel here. Basically, we'll shove it up in it. It'll kind of hold it. We'll give it some tack, or we'll tack it on with the MIG welder here. We'll clean up a little bit. Then we're going to clean up a little bit of this. We're going to cut off a chunk of this steel. And then basically on one side, we'll just support that bad boy. So let's go ahead and move this out of the way. All right, so heat check. Anyways, basically this is going to go up inside that little insulator there that I was showing you. It's just kind of beat up. We're going to reinforce it with a piece like this on the bottom of it. And this should hang in and keep it in there. Then we'll pretty much be done. Then we'll slap a new one of these up in there. We'll put the spring back in. We'll lock it all down. And then maybe we'll get to starting on these things. But let's go ahead and take care of this crap first.
All rusty up in there. I literally just want to tack this little bar I put in there to add some support from when it ripped out, and then add like this little plate in. This little guy, kind of right next to it, to add some additional support. Should have brought out the fucking lift, but if I weld that in there, it'll at least support it a little bit, so it won't come flying out again. Which I don't think it will, because this thing's not going to pop wheelies. If I even have a good ground yet. Yeah, a little.
It's just balling up because it's too cold.
No, it's it's balling up a little bit. Probably needs more heat, yeah. Junk, but it'll do. All right, well, you can see we got it all buttoned up. The coil is back in there. A new insulator's in there. It's sitting in there straight. The chain is now connected to keep that suspension compressed on this side. So it hasn't evened out completely. I think this side's probably still 2 inches. The other side's probably about 1 inch with the fender gap between the wheel and the fender lip there. But I think we can work with that for now. We got this thing topped off with water. I'd love to start them in time today, but it's still a little bit cold outside. And the garage wasn't, it was only 50 some degrees in here, which is probably good enough to get them started and tuned and timed. But the exhaust fumes, we're going to have to open up the garage door. So we're going to wait for a little bit better day. Warmer weather's probably right around the corner here. So, you know, we'll have another 67-degree day. We'll open that up. We'll get these things started, timed, and probably get them loaded on the trailer. I mean, first day down at Dragway 42 is April 12th. But I think the first day we'll get these out is April 26th. It's a Friday, Saturday combo down at Quaker City Motorsports Park. This thing is pretty much ready to go. Like I said, all we have to do is time. So I think next episode you'll see we're probably going to start working on the Power Glide transmission. A little bit of background. This unit came with a Power Glide transmission and a 400 small block Chevy that was de-stroked to 377. I rebuilt both and unfortunately cooked both of them. Well, blew up the engine and then cooked the transmission. I know what I did wrong with the transmission. Basically what happened with the transmission was that I got it all back together, new clutch packs, new servo band, and new, pretty much everything was all new except for the band adjustment nut, or everything was new except for the band adjustment bolt. And in the book, it says 7 inch-pounds. Well, my reading skills are, you know, subpar, and basically, you know, I just assumed, or I didn't even pay attention to the detail there, that it was 7 inch-pounds. I probably read it and then walked away and then came back to it an hour later and put 7 foot-pounds to it. So I completely over-adjusted the band adjustment bolt there and just put too much pressure on the band. So the first time I fired it up and that drum started spinning, it just completely torched it. So I'm hoping the drum is okay. It didn't have a lot of runtime, and basically what tells me that that's what happened is because when I fired it up, I had reverse. I didn't have any low or high gear, but what that means is that because the reverse is not based on a band, the reverse is based on a reverse drum that basically just, it spins, directs fluid, and then, you know, puts your car in reverse. All the which science behind the transmission, how it works. The Power Glide is super simple. You have a reverse clutch pack and you have your forward clutch pack, and then you have a high-low or a low-high. And basically that band will engage the drum, and then it gives you your low, then I think it releases in high and whatever witchcraft, something like that's how it happens. Well, when you have it over adjusted, you don't get any movement out of it at all in the forward direction, but you'll get it in the reverse direction because that band is not playing any effect on it. So that's what I think happened. So we're basically going to tear the thing down, put a new band in it, and probably going to inspect the clutches and all that, make sure everything is okay, and then we'll put it back there, fill it with some fluid, and then we'll have a spare transmission. Now, the other thing that I'm doing with that one still has a Power Glide input shaft. So it has, like, I think 19 splines. It's not as beefy as a Turbo 350 input spline. So we got a new Turbo 350 input shaft that we're going to put in that bad boy. The other thing is that it'll make it work with this torque converter or this torque converter. So it'll be a lot nicer to do that. Plus, like I said, it handles power. The weak spot on a Power Glide is typically that input shaft until you upgrade to the bigger, beefier Turbo 350 input shaft there. Then you have your other issues, you know, your output shaft, stuff like that. So that'll probably be the next thing. We might start tearing apart this 350 Chevy block we got back here. It's a short block, but we want to see what kind of condition it is and kind of gauge where we want to go with it. It's probably going to get bored 30 over, maybe build another 383 out of it, or we'll do like a 10,000 over and get like a 355 kit. Just build a mild, you know, between 300 and 400 horsepower engine. It's not too hard to get out of those things, but we have such nice heads, so if something happens to one of these, we have our heads and our intakes, you know, we could really just build that thing to a short block 383 and go from there. But we'll kind of see where the money's at and where we want to spend it. You know, race season's coming up, so we're not really too worried about getting projects going. But I think the next one we'll do is probably going to be the Power Glide. We're going to take the block for the Kawasaki over to a local machine shop, and he's going to bore it out to 73 millimeters. We'll probably get that back together. I'll probably put it for sale, but I'm not too sure yet, so we'll see how that's going to go. It's just such a pain in the butt to, you know, take it to the track and have somebody help you push it up. Yeah, it's a pain in the ass, basically what it is. So we might ride it once or twice and put it up for sale just to verify that the work we did is good. And then we'll have a little bit of extra spending cash. Not sure if we'll invest it back in the race cars or if we'll do something at the house or not, but we'll see what happens when we get there. So that's it for this episode of Impatient Garage. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on the next project.